still bumpy. The drive-in theater on the north side of the road a welcome replacement for the historic one that had burned down a few years earlier. There were shortcuts she could have taken to get to her destination quicker, but she was in no rush. Her parents were out of town and wouldn't be back for a week. Mom had accused her of knowing that when she scheduled this trip, and Avi had lied and said, of course not. Would she do that? Then Mom had apologized, and Dad had taken the phone and said, of course you'd do that. She'd taken 4 weeks, her leave for an entire year. Was it too much to want the first week of it to herself? Dad had been relieved that she wanted time alone. A 35-year anniversary cruise wasn't the sort of thing you wanted to cancel at the last minute. She circled around downtown Tulsa, then took 412 toward Sand Springs. It seemed everywhere she looked, she saw signs for Indian casinos. She'd taken enough gambles with her life. She had no interest in doing so with her money. Though somebody has to win, a voice whispered. Why shouldn't it be you? She recognized the voice as belonging to Ian of the soccer and priesthood. He'd had a great poker face, lying to them all even as he lay dying. Don't worry, I'm going to be okay. She squinted her eyes tightly and told herself it was because of the powerful August sun starting its afternoon slide. As she turned north again, she blinked away the few drops of moisture that spilled from her eyes. As soon as she left town behind, the scenery gave way from houses to hills, rocks, and weaving roads. The trees were green, like much of the grass, but the dustiness that covered them spoke of a dry, hot summer, as if Oklahoma had any other kind. She hoped there'd been enough rain the past few months to put on a lovely show in the fall. The farther north she drove, the fewer trees, more grass dotted with small patches of wildflowers and occasional houses. Cattle and horses lazed in the sun, dogs dozed on porches. A squirrel darted across the road in front of her, chittering as if chastising her for disrupting his day. This was real life out here. Farmers, ranchers, housewives, commuters to jobs in the city. Normal life. What was her real life? Her time in Afghanistan was over for the moment, though the army made no promises. She'd thought she'd seen the last of the desert 4 times before. She'd spent a lot of years in remote provinces that most Americans had never heard of until some of their fellow citizens died there. Even then, it was 1,000,000 miles away. Nothing for most people to worry about. It didn't touch them, safe at home. And people like Avi couldn't get away from it. When mechanical horses' heads, pumping oil in small fields, began making more frequent appearances along with real-life horses and cattle's and kids' heads, she drew a deep breath. Her destination, Tallgrass, had been founded over 100 years ago to support the oil and ranching industries in the area. Growing up in Tulsa, she'd visited Grandmere and Poppy in the town 100 times, but she remembered few details about it. On the other hand, she'd never forgotten a thing about Grandmere and Poppy. Their house, their business, her cooking, the strays Poppy collected, their church, their neighbors, and how happy they were. She'd imagined the same kind of life for herself one day. Until she'd met a handsome army officer, tall and forbidding in his dress uniform, but quick to break into a grin that made a 10-year-old girl feel like the most important thing in his world. The day she'd met then Major George Sanderson, she'd changed her mind about being a professional traveler, a zoologist, and Speaker of the House when she grew up. Any job with the word speaker in its title had sounded good to her, and decided to join the army instead. She'd done it too, enlisting during her senior year in high school. She'd even gotten her dream duty assignment, serving under Colonel Sanderson on this last go-round in Afghanistan, where 3 months ago she had watched him die. A green and white sign stated that she was entering Tallgrass city limits, and she gratefully refocused on her surroundings. Nothing looked familiar, with most of the buildings on this southern approach fewer than 10 years old, while her last visit had been